Good afternoon and welcome to everybody for joining us today for our Saskatoon Naosh and Mental Health Week virtual celebration. My name is Bob Watson and I'll be your moderator for this event. Our schedule is going to run from 12 to 1:30 today, and it's available to those both on the Zoom app and on the Facebook Live, being streamed on the Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association Facebook Live page. So just a quick little bit about myself. I am the current chair of the Saskatoon Regional Safety Committee and have a great team on our board. One of our biggest goals is to try and increase involvement in our meetings and have a little bit more involvement with our members. So we're really working on that. And so yeah, and I know we have some other RSC members on the call. So thanks for joining us, and hope you guys enjoy the virtual celebration today. I'm also an HSE supervisor with PCL Construction Management here in Saskatoon. I've been with the company for going on 7 years now. About 2 years ago, I moved my family back to Saskatoon from Regina, where I was able to meet a number of other people that, like Collin Pullar, one of our guests today. That's where I first got to meet Collin way back when I used to work in the fitness club. And so yeah. My family's here with me as well, so my wife and my 2 kids, and yeah, we're pretty happy to call Saskatoon home now. So our agenda for today is going to be, I'm just going to share a screen with everybody so we can see what we're looking for. So just going along here, bear with me as the slides get caught up to our Zoom call. There we are. So after myself, I'm going to go through some of our guests real quickly. I'll be introducing you to Honorable Don Morgan, who's our Minister of Labour Relations and Workplace Safety in the province. Again, I mentioned Collin Pullar. He will be talking a little bit as well. He's the president of the SCSA. Then we also have Gord, Dobrowolsky, who is the chair of Workers' Compensation Board Saskatchewan and WorkSafe Saskatchewan. And then we'll have our featured guest speaker, Reanna Boschee, who is with Canadian Mental Health Association here in the Saskatoon branch. And she will be talking about coping in times of change. So with what we've got going on right now with the COVID-19 pandemic and all the changes that we've had to make both in our own personal lives and in our work environments, I think this is a really fitting topic for us to look into. So I'm looking forward to her message and what she has to offer. And then we'll have Mayor Charlie Clark joining us a little later, and he'll say a few closing words before we come to a close around that 1:25, 1:30. And we will have an opportunity for questions as well. So just to go over a few things here. Bear with me. We will be getting to our speakers shortly, but before we do, I'd like to let you know to please use the Q&A function that is in the Zoom rather than the chat function. If you have any questions for the panel, if we happen to get a question a little later that our panelist has maybe already moved on, I'll make sure that we do get those answers for you all, and we will post them on the SCSA Facebook page and our RSC Facebook page so that you can get those answers. Now, if you're participating through Facebook Live, we want to make sure that we have someone monitoring that page. They will take your comments that you've posted there, put them into our Zoom call question and answer section so that we can address those as we're going. So now that we've had that out of the way, let's get started. I'd like to start off with our first guest, who is Honorable Don Morgan. He is the Minister of the Labour Relations and Workplace Safety. He was first elected in 2003 as the MLA for the Saskatoon Southeast constituency, and re-elected again in 2007, 2011, and 2016. So he's been around in our provincial government for quite some time. So I'm pretty honored to have him here today. In August of 2017, Mr. Morgan was appointed Minister of Justice and Attorney General. So he also serves as Minister of the Labour Relations and Workplace Safety I mentioned earlier. He is also Minister responsible for the Workers' Compensation Board, the Global Transportation Hub, SaskTel, and the chair of the Caucus Legislation and Regulation Review Committee. The former Deputy Premier has also served as Minister of Education and Minister of Advanced Education. Mr. Morgan practiced law in Saskatoon from 1979 to 1988 and in 92 until 2007. From 1988 to 1992, he was the chair and CEO of the Saskatchewan Legal Aid Commission and was appointed Queen's Counsel in 1990. Mr. Morgan served on the Saskatoon Public School Board from 1999 to 2003, including a term as the board chair. He was board chair of the Mendel Art Gallery, as well as volunteering numerous other charitable organizations in the province. So I'm very honored to welcome Minister Morgan to joining us today to say a few words.
Thanks very much. It's my privilege to be here and bring greetings on behalf of Premier Scott Moe and the Governor of Saskatchewan. Thank you for the kind introduction. I once took my mother, who by the way turns 99 tomorrow, to an event, and she heard the long introduction. She leans over to me, and moms can say whatever they want. She leans over and she says, "You never really could hold a job, could you?" So in any event, it's my privilege to bring greetings and to thank you for the great work that you do. The COVID-19 pandemic has impacted us all in ways that we didn't expect, and in some ways there are some surprising benefits. We're all moving towards embracing technology, having virtual meetings, things that we would have knew about before, but now we're actually participating on a fairly regular basis. While challenging, this time has given us an opportunity to develop a deeper appreciation of our family, our friends, our colleagues, and our communities, and a deeper appreciation of the importance of keeping everyone safe. We have to look at the members of your association, your organization, to see that. Using technology to continue to talk about mental health and health in a general sense tells us just how important your members are and how engaged they are and how ready they are to take action. As you know, this week marks North American Occupational Safety and Health Week, as well as Mental Health Week. These are very important occasions that should be at the top of mind for everyone every day, not just today. It's a good time for us to renew our commitment to protecting ourselves at work and at home, and to getting real about mental health and how we are doing. As the minister responsible for labor relations and workplace safety, I hear too often the consequences of not paying attention to safety and health, including mental health in the workplace. We just recently acknowledged the National Day of Mourning on April 28th, where we honored 36 individuals who lost their lives in the workplace last year. Many times we talk about statistics and our total injury rate or the fatality rate, but these are not just numbers. These are people, real people from families and communities that have lost a loved one. The best thing that we can do to honor these individuals is to do our part to building safer, healthier workplaces so that everyone comes home safe at the end of the day. Health and safety can and must be everyone's responsibility. So I want to thank your members for doing their part in keeping workers safe, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Working in construction and the associated trades, you have all been performing an essential service in this province for which we are grateful, and I know it's not been easy to adapt your work, but you've risen to the challenge and have put guidelines and restrictions in place that show your level of commitment to ensuring safety. I want to talk specifically about mental health in the workplace for just a moment. Particularly now more than ever, we need to take stock of how we're feeling. There have been changes to how you work, fears of getting sick and of making your families or others ill, and stress about the economic ramifications due to the pandemic. These and other factors weigh on you like they do on each of us in this province and country. As the Premier said last week, now is truly a time for us to pull together by staying apart. I know that that isn't easy when by nature, people in our province, the first thing they like to do is extend a helping hand or work side by side to get jobs done. The physical distancing and public health order that prohibits large gatherings, as well as our new ways of working, can take a toll on us mentally, and I want to encourage people to reach out. Physical distancing doesn't mean that we can't take care of and stay in contact with one another. Technology has made it even more possible than ever to be in contact with family, friends, or our colleagues. Today's meeting is one example of that. Mental health is so important to our overall well-being and to how we stay safe while on the job. I want to encourage your members to continue putting health and safety first. Your work is essential to helping our province stay on a steady path for growth, and for that, I thank you. Let's continue our work towards Mission Zero and to ensuring the physical and mental health of workers front and center, not just during this week, but always. So please stay safe. I want to wish you a productive rest of your meeting. Thanks very much for the chance to be here.
Excellent. Thank you, Minister Morgan, for joining us today and for all your years of service to the province. And appreciate the words. All right, back to our next screen. Okay, so moving along here, those were good words. So I hope everybody had an opportunity to participate in the events Minister Morgan had mentioned. I know on the 28th, we had taken an opportunity during one of our toolbox talks on one of our projects to have that moment of silence and talk to our crew behind the meeting behind that, and again, recognize the 36 lives that were lost in our province in 2019. So we're going to move right along here into our next guest. Our next guest is the president of the SCSA, Mr. Collin Pullar. Collin has served as the president of the SCSA, Saskatchewan Construction Safety Association, for the past 6 years. He's been leading the industry-funded membership-based nonprofit organization in providing construction safety training, advisory, and auditing services to more than 9,000 companies in the Saskatchewan residential, commercial, and industrial sectors. So it's a big undertaking with that. Collin holds a Master of Business Administration from the Levine Graduate School of Business. He also has a Master's Certificate in Public Management from the Johnson Shoyama Graduate School of Public Policy. I hope I said that properly. He is a recent graduate of the Institute of Corporate Directors. He's the Director of Education Program, where he recently been awarded the ICDD designation. So I had to do a little bit of research in that. And what it means is he knows how to work in the board setting, in the boardroom. So it's really good work, Collin. Some little bit of personal information about Collin and some of his professional interests. He is the Vice Chair of the Horizon College Board of Governors. He's the incoming Vice Chair of the Regina and District Chamber of Commerce. He's also the Board Director of the Regina Exhibition Association Limited, also known as REAL. He is also members of the Leaders Council for the Paul J. Hill School of Business and the Levine Graduate School of Business, and a member of the University of Regina President's Champion Program, where they provide advice and perspective to the university's presidents. So very busy with a lot of other boards and committees that you're involved in. Collin also likes to speak regularly to a range of industry and academic and sports audiences, and he's been a lifelong advocate for drug-free in sport. Collin brings successful training and a team philosophy to the business environment in his presentations, and I personally enjoy listening to him. And sometimes you catch him and Jamie and I on the radio. They're always good to listen to. They've got a good chemistry between the two of them. At various times throughout his life, Collin has been a coach, a mentor, and an athlete. And he continues to compete at the national level and international level today. He has represented Canada in the International Powerlifting Federation World Championships and is currently holds 4 Canadian national titles, has medaled in 3 World Championships, and as of September of 2019, is the current Commonwealth champion. Congratulations on that, Collin. Collin and his wife, Terry, live in Regina with their 2 boys, Matthew and Michael. So it's my pleasure to introduce Collin to our talk today.
Well, thanks, Bob. Much like the minister, I can't seem to just be able to do one thing. So, I really appreciate the invitation. Today, I came into the office first time in 3 weeks. I was telling folks earlier today, and for the last 3 weeks, I've been working in the basement, and I was telling somebody yesterday, I felt like I've been in here so long that I nearly lost my tan. So, so that's, I'm not sure that's something that you guys all want to repeat, but that's how I feel anyways. And although on the weekend I was able to participate in the Steps for Life event, which, basically went for a little walk on our own and reflected on people and friends that I've lost to tragedies. And just people that I know that have lost others, and so in a way mourned with them as I was walking, and also it gave me a chance to kind of recommit to the role and the job that I have today. So again, thanks, Bob, for inviting me, and as well as members of the regional safety committee, all of our regional safety committees. Thank you, Minister Morgan, Gord, Mayor Clark will be speaking a bit later, and Reanna, our main speaker, for participating as well. Just for those who might be new to the regional safety committees, the original RSCs, just so you're aware, were built as a network for business leaders who wanted to make some changes in their organizations. They realized they needed to change. And so they wanted just a way to informally get together, share ideas, support each other. And so the RCs today are certainly a legacy of that, of what was really pulled together over 25 years ago. So excited to see that there's still a really high level of engagement. And so again, really thankful that folks are participating and leading in. I'm sure with the recent announcements made yesterday by the province, I certainly see that as something that folks should be very positive about, and I think that people will be excited about. I also want to today, what I want to do for folks who are on the call, I want to thank and encourage each of you. As we've been going through, or we've gone through this particular public health crisis that has gripped us globally. Many of our companies, I hate to even begin to list them, but many have taken a really strong lead in planning and reevaluating a lot of their work procedures, communicating heavily with their teams on how to manage through this particular COVID crisis. It's really provided an opportunity for folks to refocus on safety, because it's something that hits and could hit every one of us in the province. Lots of people have utilized the resources on the SCSA COVID page. If you haven't, I encourage you to do that. We've recently updated the SCSA mobile app, and with some new features, including medical services locations based on your GPS location from your phone. Again, our page includes posters, guides, other information, and we've seen a lot of utilization of that. I'm glad that with our other partners, we've been able to support the industry with that. A couple other things I'll just mention very quickly. Standardized protocol documents. You'll find that on our website or through social media. And that particular protocol document has been very helpful for companies, and we were able to work with our industry partners to pull that together in recent weeks. Then in the next few weeks, Bob, I expect that we will have release version 1 of our e-passport. For those who are familiar with the SCSA's passport book, that booklet that people can track their training records in. We'll be moving to an electronic format. So coming in to have it printed, having to touch a bunch of paper, that kind of stuff will soon be a thing of the past. And so over the next couple of weeks, our members will begin to receive emails with sign-on instructions so that they can utilize that. And it'll be, I think, a very helpful tool for our members out there. And as well as staying connected with each other and our advisors through forums like this, or our advisors also have been having webinars twice a week, and they've been really well attended. And so appreciate your attendance, and hopefully as we get your feedback, we will also be able to provide more information that'll be really useful for you. COVID is really, clearly it's a serious risk, but it's not the only risk that we've got on our work sites. It's one of many. We still have way too many issues with things like falls from heights and open floors, and we continue to be really concerned about that, and that'll continue to be a real focus over this next year, and as well as a lot of the other invisible threats that like COVID can have significant impact in people's lives, and the invisible threats like the asbestos exposures, where a good third to half of all fatalities in our industry are a result result from this alone. And I think, and maybe the minister can even confirm for me, but if I remember correctly, we're probably between every 3 or 4 weeks losing another person in our province because of the effects of asbestos in their lives. And so today we are in the coming months, we're going to be talking to our members more about this, and really could use your help in getting the message out, but also giving us feedback in terms of what can we do as an industry to help address this problem, particularly as new workers come into the workplace. People are renovating homes, renovating buildings, and we want to make sure that that people are in a good position to protect themselves. I guess probably the last thing I would say here is that I too, I'm really glad that we're talking about mental health today. This has been a super trying time for a lot of us. If we're not working from home, we have got a number of people that haven't been able to work at all, and whether it's you directly or a spouse, it's certainly been a trying time, and in our industry as well as others, mental health has always been a challenging issue. And typically the last thing you want to do when you're really going through difficult and stressful times is to retreat and isolate yourself. But here we are in a situation where we're forced to isolate ourselves, and so we've got these compounding issues of stressors and then being isolated. And so even as business leaders, we've got to be extremely diligent about staying connected with our teams, with each other, maintaining our personal connections with families, even though we have to be physically separated. And so, I strongly encourage you and every person on this call who's got a leadership role, for sure, to stay connected with your folks, check on them regularly, encourage each other, and and Bob, and I think that's probably the key thing that they want to get as a message today, is to encourage each other during this time to continue doing and being consistent and being diligent with the work that we have today to prevent the spread, but also be really diligent on staying connected. So thank you, Bob, and thanks to the RSC here for inviting me to speak today, and look forward to hearing other folks speak.
Absolutely. Thanks, Collin. Appreciate you taking some time to join us today, and some good words there. It is challenging making that change from whether it's more of that administrative support where you're more in the office and then hitting the different projects and job sites, to having to come home and work from the house. You become a teacher. You become a lot more things going on. So there's certainly some challenges there. So. That's it's great. Thanks for joining us, Collin. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to my screen that I'm sharing here. So we'll move right along to our next guest, because I believe he's ready to go. And there we go. All right. So our next guest is the chair of the Saskatchewan Workers' Compensation Board and WorkSafe Saskatchewan, and it's Mr. Gord Dobrowolsky. I've known Gord for a long time, from way back. Well, originally I'm from Prince Albert originally, so Gord is a Prince Albert resident. I'm going to go over a little bit about Gord's background here. So Gord was appointed in 2013. To the board. He obtained his Bachelor of Education from the University of Saskatchewan and taught for 5 years before going into business. He operated Delta Management Limited, a public relations and marketing company, for 6 years and spent 14 years in the cell phone industry, during which he earned SaskTel's Top Dealer Award 9 times. So really knew how to take care of his customers with the cell phone industry. As a matter of fact, I think that's where my mom and dad got their first original bag phone, if you can remember those ones. So depending on the demographic of our audience, they might not get that one. So Gord has extensive board experience, having served as the vice chair of the Saskatchewan Liquor and Gaming Licensing Commission. He's been a member of the Saskatchewan Executive Council for 6 years, and is the chairperson of the Prince Albert Parkland Health Region for 4 years, beginning in 2009. In addition to pursuing ongoing director in adjudication training, Gord has completed his certificate in adjudication for administrative agencies, boards, and tribunals from Osgoode Hall Law School of York University, and has received his professional director designation from the Johnson Shoyama Graduate School of Public Policy. So Gord has also been a volunteer board member of the Victoria Hospital Foundation in Prince Albert for 6 years. He is currently a member of the Prince Albert and District Chamber of Commerce, the Prince Albert Elks Club, and the Prince Albert and Saskatchewan Wildlife Federation. He is a supporter of Special Olympics, and in 2014, he was Sask Business named him one of Saskatchewan's Men of Influence, and in 2015, he was named to the Wall of Honor by the College of Education at the University of Saskatchewan. So it's my privilege to welcome Gord to speak with us all today and share a little bit of information with you.
Bob, thank you very much. First of all, I have a new earbud, so can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great, Gord.
Perfect. All right, let's get going. The only thing you forgot in my introduction, Bob, and I know many people who know me will attest positively to this, and that is I am the best fisherman in the whole wide world. You forgot to mention that, but I'll just add.
I'll add it to
yeah, I'm quite a fisher guy when in the summer, and I enjoy it a lot. So without further ado, Bob, thanks very much for inviting me to share a few words on behalf of the Saskatchewan Workers' Compensation Board and WorkSafe Saskatchewan. And also thank you to all online for showing your interest in this event today. As you probably know, WorkSafe is the partnership between the WCB and the Ministry of Labor Relations and Workplace Safety. We are living, as you've heard 100 times or more, in unprecedented times. When our province declared a state of emergency because of COVID-19 on March 18th, almost 2 months ago now, the world around us changed very quickly. And we don't know how long this new normal will last. What we do know is that we have all had to adapt to our changing circumstances. At the WCB, like many organizations, we quickly moved over 500 staff out of our offices to get them set up to work from home so we could service employers from your industry as well as workers. Because the construction industry has been allowed to continue working in the province during the pandemic, this has created new health and safety challenges for you and your workers. I want to take this opportunity to encourage you to continue to work safely, even in these very difficult times. At the WCB and WorkSafe, we believe, and I hope you share this belief, that an effective safety and injury prevention program is an essential element of all business plans. And we've certainly seen the positive effects that these programs have in Saskatchewan workplaces. For example, in 2019, for the 4th consecutive year, there were 0 injuries, 0 fatalities, and of course now 0 suffering in 88% of employers in Saskatchewan. So congratulations. Those numbers are a direct result of the efforts of people like you, representing employers, workers, safety associations, and labor unions right across the province. In fact, from 2008, when WorkSafe was launched, to 2019, our provincial workplace total injury rate has dropped by almost 52%. When we look specifically at the commercial, residential, and construction trade industries, we've also seen a decrease in the number of work-related injuries. In 2015, almost 3,000 workers were hurt on the job, and in 2019, 1,800 workers were hurt on the job, representing a decrease of 39% over 5 years. We're not at 0 yet, but tremendous strides, and thank you and congratulations. That doesn't happen without your commitment to safety on the job. So again, thank you for your work to reduce work-related injuries. If we dig a little deeper into the injury numbers in the construction industry, we find that the top causes of injuries from 2015 to 2019 were contacts with objects and equipment, exertion, and falls. Actually, as Collin mentioned, falls from heights has been identified as one of the priorities in WorkSafe Saskatchewan's 3-year Fatalities and Serious Injury Strategy, which was a joint effort between WorkSafe, Saskatchewan employers, and labor representatives. Publicly launched on December 5th of 19, this strategy works to address high-risk industries and occupations and the tasks within those industries that are resulting in these fatalities and serious injuries. And again, as Collin has mentioned, these include falls from heights, motor vehicle collisions, and exposure to asbestos. Exposure to asbestos being the number one issue here. Already in 2020, there have been 5 deaths related to asbestos exposure. This continues to be a threat in our workplace, and people continue to be exposed. And quite frankly, from 2003 to now, asbestos exposures account for 36% of all work-related deaths. The 2019 year-end fatalities and serious injuries report highlights the actions that were taken in 2019 to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries in the province of Saskatchewan, along with the outcomes in injury rates for the year. And you can read the 2019 report on the WorkSafe website at WorkSafe.ca. I'm sorry, WorkSafeSask.ca. As an example, there have been, when it comes to fatalities, an average of 34 per year since 1990, and a total of 1,026 fatalities in that time. Another statistic, when it comes to serious injuries, there's about 2,400 per year. And another statistic, 11% of all claims account for 80% of costs and around 80% of compensation days. While this report offers a look at steps to drive our injury and fatality rates lower in the years to come, it is the efforts of employers like yourselves and the workers you employ who will have the greatest impact on our fatality and injury rates in the province. By employers and workers taking steps to ensure safety and taking the time to wear proper protective equipment, we can continue to bring our injury rates down. Lately, we've started at the WCB to use a new catchphrase to illustrate the commitment we hope all businesses owners share. I am very confident that you are familiar with the phrase on time and on budget as a way of describing the successful completion of a project. I know myself, I have attended many functions over the years where the MC has said on time, on budget, and we've all applauded that phrase. However, I was at one last year, a grand opening of a facility, and that phrase was used, and I was very aware of the fact that there was one fatality in the completion of that project, but there was no mention of that. It just said on time and on budget, and we use that as a measure of success. Well, we'd like you to factor in the safety element by expanding that phrase to say on time, on budget, with no injuries. Then and only then can that project be deemed a success. We believe that by adding those last 3 words, we're now covering every measure of success, including the health and safety of the people working on those projects. And of course, in 2020, this includes keeping work sites clean and maintaining physical distancing to help prevent the spread of COVID-19. In this time of uncertainty surrounding COVID-19, many people are worried about their personal safety and their safety at work. That in turn leads to another area that we are concentrating our prevention efforts on. As most of you are no doubt aware, mental health injuries are on the rise across our province and our nation. In fact, here in Saskatchewan, our data at the WCB indicates the number of primary mental health claims has increased by, get this, 213% from 2015 to 2019. At the WCB, we now have a dedicated psychological unit to deal with these issues. There are many reasons for such a dramatic increase, including increased awareness of the issues surrounding mental health in the workplace and a lessening of the stigma associated with mental health challenges. Still, a 213% increase can't solely be attributed to increased awareness and more workers willing to ask for help. While the total number of psychological claims accepted only represents a small percentage of the total number of WCB claims, the rate by which they are increasing certainly demands our attention. That's why we are working with our partners here in Saskatchewan and across the country to provide employers with resources to ensure their workers have the help they need when they need it. The WCB is working with registered psychologist Dr. Jyoti Samra to develop resources that will help employers such as yourselves implement solid psychological health and safety practices in your organizations. To help serve you better, we need to hear from you. You can send your comments on what supports and resources would help your organization from a psychological health and safety perspective to email@wcbsask.com. We are planning to launch those resources in June, so please send us your thoughts and suggestions as soon as you can. In the meantime, with COVID-19 now a factor in our everyday lives, it's even more important to be mindful of our mental health. It's normal to feel anxious during a public health emergency, and there are things we can do to help manage our anxiety. I'd like to take just a moment to share a few tips from Dr. Samra. 1, educate yourself about the virus and take precautions such as washing your hands regularly and maintaining regular health routines. 2, while it may be tempting to constantly check for the latest COVID-19 news, it's healthier to limit the amount of time you look for updates. There are other important and positive things we can and should focus on in our lives. Like, what are the riders doing? And 3, stay connected with people you trust to talk to when you feel anxious and practice mindfulness. This too can help you cope. Most importantly, if you're experiencing anxiety or panic that's affecting your ability to continue your regular activities, please reach out and ask for help. It's okay. We have a number of mental health resources to help workers and employers on the WorkSafe website. Our online resources also include lots of information about COVID-19 in the workplace. I urge you to check out those resources for yourself to see what you can do to navigate these tough days that you've been through and the tough days ahead. So together, we can keep more workers safe on the job, both through this pandemic and after it's over. As part of that effort, I hope you'll take up the challenge of including no injuries as part of your successful measurement. A safe work environment is a more successful one. When workers feel safe at work, they can be more efficient, more productive, and produce higher quality work. In turn, higher quality leads to profits, and everyone goes home safely at the end of each day. We'd certainly consider that a success, and we hope you do as well. So, Bob, thanks to you and Saskatoon Regional Safety Committee for inviting me to speak to you again this year. If you have any questions, please direct them to the facility that Bob had given you at the beginning of this, or simply email me, Dobrowolsky@wcbsas.com. So with that, thank you for listening. Please take care of yourselves, stay safe, stay healthy, and thank you.
Well, thanks very much for joining us today, Gord. We appreciate your words, and it's interesting to see how a lot of those numbers are it's improving and changing, and it's good to see that there's more support and more resources being used with workers' compensation and WorkSafe Saskatchewan. So thanks again, Gord, and hopefully things get better for everybody where you can get out and do some fishing.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, take care. All right, so moving along here, we're right on time for our next speaker. So I'm going to introduce to you our guest speaker, who is Reanna Boschee. She comes to us from She's a public educator with the Canadian Mental Health Association here at the Saskatoon branch. A little bit about her. She grew up in a small farming town in southern Saskatchewan and obtained her Bachelor of Arts in Science and Sociology and Psychology from the University of Lethbridge. So in 2016, Reanna moved to Saskatoon to pursue a career and to help out on her partner's family farm. So when she's not collaborating with coworkers and other community organizations, she can be found spending time with family and friends, spending it outdoors. So she believes both physical and psychological safety in the workplace should be made an utmost priority, as it affects not only the employee themselves, but their loved ones. So I'm looking forward to what you have to say today, Reanna, and thanks for taking the time to come and give us a presentation and share with the province.
Awesome.
I'll
Thank
stop
you.
sharing my screen so you can go and share yours.
Sounds good. I'll just take 2 seconds here to get that launched.
Sure.
So again, I just want to say thank you to Bob and everybody at the RSC for inviting me to be here today. It's a great honor to be on the same call as everyone that's spoken before me. As I was listening to everybody else's bios, I thought, wow, this is really cool that I was listed as a special guest speaker, but those are some pretty impressive bios to contend with. I kind of learned a little bit from them on how to maybe spruce mine up a little bit. So again, I just want to thank all of the speakers before me for all making mental health a priority in their notes. That was really, it made me feel really good. And I think it's really nice that this conversation landed during Mental Health Week. It's been a really busy week for us here as well. So again, I just want to thank everybody who's on the call, the panelists, the participants, the attendees for taking the time to do this. As Bob said, if you guys have any questions as we go along, feel free to drop them in the Q&A and they will get to me. Even if it's, you know, I've moved on and you think, oh shoot, just type it in there. We'll either, you know, stop and address it, or, you know, at the end we'll wrap up too. So from there, we will get started. So one of the priorities that Bob wanted me to touch on today is just some of the things that we're seeing here at CMHA and in the mental health field in general right now. So we are definitely seeing an increased need for mental health support. Kind of like what they said, we on March 17th, almost 2 months ago, we were, you know, as a staff kind of said, you know, starting tomorrow, everyone's working from home. And in a big hurry, we all shifted to be able to do that. We have a very small staff, but we have a fairly large base of people that we support. So my coworkers who do more mental health support had to shift all of their phone calls online. Or sorry, they're all their in-person appointments to either online or over the phone. And when they were maybe talking to them once every 2 or 3 weeks before, it was, you know, an increased demand to, you know, speak with them. We support a lot of people because we're very flexible in how we're able to support them. So it was, I can't maybe speak for them. It was an easier transition, I think, than for some people, because we were able to shift a lot of our support onto the phone. As a province, CMHA Sask Division also responded by this wellness support line that you may have seen in the media. And so what that is each major center now has a phone number that people can connect with, and it's not a crisis line, but it's a wellness support line where people can call to get information or support, or just connect with somebody if you're feeling isolated, you know, if you're a single parent, or if your partner works in healthcare, or now that it's, I don't know about everybody else, but seeding started yesterday, which means there's going to be a lot more primary caregivers at home and feeling isolated. So that's just another resource. So we also want to take note of, yes, it's important to stay home during this time in terms of physical safety, but we do see the weight that's creating in terms of mental safety as well in this echo pandemic that is starting to already occur and will continue to occur for a long time after this. That being said, I was just on a staff call this morning just to check in. And one thing that our mental health counselors have noticed is that people, and you can see resilience there on my slide, and that's something that I put in a week ago. And that second point, I actually added about an hour ago, just based on what I'm hearing from my coworkers, because we are seeing a lot of resilience from people, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means, but it's the ability to cope through stressful situations, especially ones that we didn't necessarily have, you know, any say in being involved in. And a lot of my coworkers right now are actually seeing an uptick in people's anxiety and depression and their sense of being in crisis. And what we kind of realized is, even though, again, we talk a lot about this new normal, and so now that we're kind of talking about this week being, you know, slight reopening and what those steps are going to look like moving forward, again, like previous speakers have said to me, we're not getting there in any big kind of hurry. However, we do see some, you know, changes back to how things were coming. And so that's giving people a lot of hope. And when that happens, is it helps our mind to feel a little bit more safe. That being said, when we are in that sense of trauma, our minds are just doing what we can to get through the day. But now that we are having some sense of hope, whether we consciously feel that or not, for most of us, when we see these kinds of guidelines coming from our government, it helps our minds to feel a little bit more safe. That being said, that kind of tells our minds that, you know, the main crisis may be over for now. And again, we maybe cognitively know that maybe there's a second wave coming, things can go back. But right now, our mind is kind of looking forward and saying, oh, okay, things are kind of getting back to normal, possibly soon in the future. Again, that makes us feel safe, and it kind of allows that trauma to start to come up a little bit. So if you're noticing maybe increased anxiety or a decreased ability to kind of cope day to day, or your normal coping mechanisms aren't working, that's maybe a big reason right now. And it's just something to be mindful of for yourself and for your loved ones going forward, that as our minds begin to feel more safe again, that the trauma that we've been through that we may not even realize that we've experienced is going to start to come up, and we're going to start seeing some of the real effects of the mental health impact that this pandemic has had. And so again, when we talk about being resilient, it's the ability to cope with difficult situations. And so the idea is to build upon those resilience skills before we get into a situation such as this. That being said, maybe people that haven't necessarily lived through or live with a mental illness haven't always had to maybe have a really big toolkit for that. And that's not to say that people that haven't lived with mental illness don't have that, but as an example, and I've cleared this with the people that I'm going to talk about, they're okay with it. And I'll start by saying I live with depression, anxiety, and ADHD, so I do speak from a lived experience. My one of the couples in my family, the husband has lived with quite bad anxiety for a very long time, and his wife is fairly you know, not laid back, but she doesn't live with that. She doesn't have that experience. And about a month in to this situation, I noticed that the husband, just talking on the phone with them, he was coping much better than his wife, because he's already had to practice coping with these feelings of anxiety for a really long time, and she hasn't maybe necessarily built her toolkit up. And so that's not to say that we can't, you know, begin to build that toolkit when we're in this time of crisis, but it just goes to show that and that's been a pretty common theme I've been hearing from other people in the mental health field, is that we're coping better than we thought we were going to, and people who haven't necessarily had to develop those coping strategies are kind of, you know, trying to get those things together. So again, the idea of resilience is that, you know, we don't always necessarily get to choose the situations we find ourselves in, but we can choose how we respond. And so this is the point where I hope that I can bring up a poll. So there will be 2 questions there. If we can just answer the first one, and then my plan is to try to launch that poll again near the end, and I just have 1 other question. So you will see 2 pop up. Please only just answer the first one. So what I will have people do is read through the statements and see how many of those statements they can identify with. And these are actually statements that indicate a level of resilience. And if you don't identify with a lot of them, that's okay too. They're just kind of things to start thinking about. So I'll just try to launch this first poll here. So I'll give people just, you know, maybe 30 seconds here. And then when we get the majority of the answers, then we'll close it. And I should also say it indicates in the question, but choose as many as apply to you. You don't just have to pick one. Okay, so I've had the poll open for just over a minute. So just for the sake of time, we'll move on. Again, because some were answered on the bottom, we'll see later if I could relaunch that and have, I believe I should be able to relaunch that. It may, we just won't get the same results, but we'll try that again and kind of just see what happens there. So I will end the poll and just share the results. And so as you guys can see, there are quite a few people who do identify with a lot of these, and that's really good to hear. One that came up the highest percentage was, I believe I can learn from difficult times, which I think is going to be very important for us right now. We're in probably some of the most difficult times and experiences that a lot of us have ever been through. So I just want to say thank you for all of those that participated. It's kind of just nice to get to know the audience a little bit too. And so another thing that Bob kind of wanted to make a priority is things to look out for. And I know that we discussed the idea of people who are frontline workers and those that are work from homers. In my belief, I think a lot of these skills can be, or a lot of these ideas can be transferable to both of those groups. And so these are kind of the main things that we've noticed. So things to watch out for is increased substance use, and especially for those people who have struggled with substance use previously and are maybe have now made the commitment to remain sober. It's been a little bit more difficult because, again, some of the things they say when with that program is to not stay isolated and to get out and connect with people, and we're being asked to isolate ourselves, so that can be very triggering for people. And look out for inattentive use of healthy coping mechanisms. So the idea is that, you know, just do what we need to do to kind of get through the day, but we don't want to develop any, you know, crutches that we may continue to lean on as we move into the future. So the idea, people ask me all the time, what about this? Is this okay? What if we do this? And a common theme that I kind of bring back to people is kind of take a pulse on how you feel before you use that coping mechanism, and how do you feel after? Do you feel the same, better, worse? That will kind of give you an idea if that's a healthy coping mechanism for you. And so to kind of have, you know, maybe a stockpile of some things that you can move along to as well, lots of different kinds of coping mechanisms. And they don't have to be big things for me. Sometimes I just like to keep a word search on my desk. If I am getting overwhelmed, I grab it and I just find a few words and continue to move on, just little things like that. And keeping in mind that what might be beneficial for one person isn't necessarily going to work for everybody. And so that's why I so appreciate everyone that's been sharing tips on this call, online, all of those things where we see. But sometimes I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. Well, that coping mechanism's not really working for me. Is there something wrong with me? But we need to keep in mind that some of these really general tips aren't going to work for everybody. And routine is a big one of those, is they say, you know, now that we're home, to find a routine. But if you weren't a routine person before that, trying to slam yourself into a routine isn't going to feel good for you either. So again, just finding what works best for you. Again, my common theme, how do you feel better afterwards? Is it, you know, are you doing harm to yourself or somebody else? No, then it's probably okay. And just have mindful, just using your coping techniques mindfully. So we're going to get into what some of those coping techniques can look like. And the biggest one, the biggest theme, and my executive director at work has reminded us of this all the time, is having some self-compassion. Like some other speakers before me mentioned, you know, we had to shift into a new normal very quickly, right? So that may mean taking all of your work home, and also being expected to be a teacher and a caregiver to your parents, explaining to them why they can't leave, explaining to the kids why they can't leave, why they can't see their friends, becoming a teacher to them now, still trying to get your own work done. You know, if a partner, or and maybe if there's not a partner situation, even if you're, you know, a single person or a single parent and you're in an essential job, now what does that look like for childcare with your kids, right? So just finding things that work for you, again, that are healthy, and not judging yourself so much for that. So like you see there, rather than comparing yourself and your life to what you see from your friends or social media, recognize that everyone is just coping in their own way. They're trying their best to kind of survive and get through what's going on right now. And one of the best pieces of advice that I got was to allow yourself to feel your emotions rather than shoving them down. It's really hard to find that balance. It's not good to dwell on those either. For example, for me, I told myself I wasn't going to bring this up, but here we are. I had to reschedule my entire wedding. It's not going to look anything like what we thought it was going to be. It was supposed to be for the end of June. And I kept telling myself, it's just a wedding. You can't move births. You can't move grads. You can't move deaths, but you can move a wedding. And I just kept telling myself that and kept telling myself that to kind of push through. And eventually I just had a breakdown on the phone with my parents one day. And I was feeling really guilty for all of these negative emotions. And what we kind of came to realize is it's not that you're necessarily just moving a wedding. It's all this time we've spent planning, all the money, all, you know, the grief over what that was going to look like. And so just letting myself actually feel those feelings and not to feel guilty about that. I'm a big believer in my problems aren't problems just because somebody else has it worse. If I can look at a more severe situation, that may help me to kind of put my situation in perspective, but we all need to allow ourselves to feel those feelings without guilt. So this is another really important one that I wanted to talk about today too, as a coping mechanism, is setting boundaries. And as you can see there, some people cross them without knowing, and it's hard sometimes to set those boundaries back in place and reinforce them. It is what I like to just say, the base of setting boundaries is to be able to take care of other people in our lives, we have to take care of ourselves first. There's just no way around it. So we'll talk about some ways of self-care at the end. And I know that setting boundaries is really difficult for people. It doesn't feel very nice. Especially, you know, for caretakers, or, you know, we're always seen as that nice person. It's really hard when we set those boundaries, when we get reactions from people, that tells us a lot about our relationship with them, and it definitely tells you more about them than about you. And that can be really difficult for us to realize too. But when we set those boundaries, it allows us to take the time that we need to handle our own things so that we can better serve people in our life. So just kind of an example of, you know, if you need to have your coffee or you have to have your shower first thing in the morning to feel like a person, that's okay. You can ask, and this is just an example, but you can say to your partner, I need you to keep the kids out of the bathroom for 10 minutes while I have a shower, and then I'll be ready to handle everything else that's coming today. That's an okay boundary to set. And I don't mean to sound naive. I get that not every parent every morning is going to get their shower if that's what they want, but that's just a quick example. If it's, you know, a 15-minute phone call with someone that you really care about a couple times a week, just setting that time aside is really, really important. And laughter is really, really important. coping mechanism through what's going on right now. And I've had some people give me a little bit of pushback on this, and I understand where they're coming from. Absolutely nothing about what's going on right now is funny, and I completely understand that. But to take everything so seriously all day long is going to drive us to the brink. And so it's being able to find, you know, the humor in some situations. It doesn't have to be with COVID-19. If you don't think it's funny at all, that's fine, but just seeking out other forms of humor, if it's watching a show that you enjoy, or, you know, even pulling out like your old comic book, or just, you know, telling funny jokes with someone on the phone. As you can see there are some actual physical benefits to having laughter. And one of them is actually boosting our immune system. And I can't think of a better time for us to have our immune systems higher right now. It can also increase our personal satisfaction and make things easier to cope with, aka building our resiliency, actually finding humor in situations, and being able to laugh at some things sometimes actually can help us get through a situation. I've worked in jobs before where there is some dark humor involved, and to an outsider, you would look at that and go, really, that's not funny. But sometimes you just have to be able to find the humor in a situation, and it actually can improve your mood. And this is actually like a tangible tip that I really like to give people. I think it's pretty neat. We can actually trick our minds and our bodies into feeling better. So when we smile, typically naturally, if we're laughing or if we're really happy, that smile is going along with these chemicals in our brain that are actually causing us to feel good. And so because of that constant association, what we can actually do, even if we're not feeling very good, is if you fake a smile, that will actually trick the brain into releasing some of those feel-good chemicals. It may not release all of the, you know, the same amount as if it were natural, but, you know, if we're feeling down or stressed or in anxiety, to me, that's something I don't even, besides moving the upper corners of my mouth, you don't even have to move your body. And that can actually help us to feel better. And staying active is so important right now. And again, can be difficult for some people just because we may feel like we don't want to get out of the house. If it's possible to, I mean, and it is, in my opinion, it is, if you can go for a safe run or a walk or get outside, especially now that we have this beautiful weather. I'm going to pretend like there's not rain in the forecast this weekend, and just spending more time outside. It also, exercise is an excellent stress reliever. I don't know if anyone on here is an athlete or a runner, but after you really physically exert yourself, you almost get that runner's high or that athlete's high. It's because there's actually chemicals getting released in our brain, again, that make us feel really good. And so the reason I like exercise is for those reasons. It releases those feel-good chemicals, and like you can see on that bottom point, is it can take us out of that mindset where we're, you know, maybe we're dwelling on something. I know my anxiety and depression really love it when I'm just sitting on the couch and not really staying occupied. And so if I can even just get up off the couch, and one of my go-tos, and you'll see this in one of the next slides, is yoga. And especially at-home yoga right now can be really nice. There's videos that are 5 minutes long, and there's videos that are an hour long. So I mean, and everything in between. So just finding some way to get moving and get your mind off of what's going on right now, and it'll give you this sense of achievement, like you've accomplished something. And that's really important for our mental health right now too. So again, these are just some other activities that you can do. Like a lot of people have mentioned, limiting your news take is really, really important in the beginning for me. And again, what I like to discuss when we talk about limiting our news intake is doing what makes you feel good, and not, again, if it's healthy, if you're not hurting yourself or others, and not judging yourself for that. So in the beginning, when this was all happening, again, it had to do with maybe seeing if we could still do the wedding some way, or, you know, my family's kind of all over the place. So seeing what was going on where they were living, I was constantly on the news. And you know what? Consuming a lot of that, it made me feel a little bit more safe. It made me feel like I was in control, especially right now when we're in a time where everything feels so out of our control. And eventually, after the first couple of weeks, I kind of brought in that trick. How do I feel now that I've just spent 15 minutes paging through this case by case list in Saskatchewan, and it wasn't great. I wasn't sleeping great. And so I realized, even if the next day I had that urge to grab my phone and look, I had to tell myself this: you know, you have the experience that this is not going to make you feel better. And so really being honest with yourself, even if it's difficult. And I actually just want to come back and touch on that. The idea of control is finding, instead of maybe routine, and I mean, and routine is very important, but finding the little healthy things in our life that we can control when we have all of these regulations and guidelines and laws telling us what we can and can't do right now. When we have lived our whole lives feeling some sense of control, and then those things have been taken away from us, can be very detrimental. And so finding other places of our lives that we can maintain control in a healthy way. So it could be reorganizing things, or making a meal plan, or, you know, maybe mapping out your grocery shop now that we have to follow the arrows, right? Just even if it's these little things, just to give our minds some sense of control over our surroundings. And I mean, this is just kind of a quick list, but, you know, word searches, puzzles, things to kind of get your mind off of what's going on right now. Journaling can be really important. Any kind of journaling. For myself, I do an intention and gratitude journal, and I find that that's been really healthy for me. So every night before I go to bed, I write just a few things that I'm grateful for. And, you know, some days it's like, I'm grateful for that really cool opportunity I got with work, and I'm grateful for, you know, this specific thing. And other days it is, I am grateful that I have a safe, comfortable house to live in. And sometimes that's all it is, and sometimes, and that's okay. The idea of meditating, or just, my friend put it to me yesterday, was some nothing time, nothingness, just to like clear your mind and just not have to think about anything, can be really nice too. And just setting that time aside for yourself. And then, like I mentioned, yoga already. Because I love it so much, I have to plug it a little bit. But what I really like about it is it combines kind of that idea of getting out of our own heads along with the staying active, because it really focuses on combining breath and movement. And so when you're trying to find what feels good for yourself, find what feels good for your body when you're practicing yoga, is it can be a really good distraction, and you can be a few minutes in and realize you haven't thought about what happened the day before, or what your to-do list is. For myself, it maybe doesn't always start out that easy, but I've also found with practice that it's a really nice way to kind of take my mind off of things. So with that, I would just like to open up the last poll, if it will work for me here. So I'll relaunch it. And again, if you just want to answer that last question. So down at the bottom there, these are just some kinds of things that we've talked about already today. So choose as many as apply to you. So how many of the things that we've talked about do you already do? I'll encourage people to answer. Last time we had 10 or 12 people out of the 30, so let's see if we can get a couple more than that. So I'll let you guys go ahead and answer those. So I'll just give it another 10 or 15 seconds here, just because I see I'm getting close to my time and I want to be mindful of everyone's schedule. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and close that poll just so I can quickly share the results with everybody before we wrap up. So I'll just scroll down to the bottom there. So look at that, 14 out of 14 people are finding humor. That's really awesome to hear, you guys. Staying active, that's really great. I'm really glad to hear that. So I will just close that off now. And I know I'm kind of at my time here, but I'll give you guys a chance to ask any questions that you might have. If not, if we have to wrap up right away, then you can always, again, put the questions into the Q&A, or you can always send me an email, and I can, my email is just the letter R and my last name, so R Boschee, and you can see the spelling on the screen there at CMHA Saskatoon.ca. So with that, I will maybe hand it back over to Bob.
Unmute myself and get my video back on here. Well, Reanna, thank you very much for your presentation. That was excellent. Really good message. A lot of great tips.
Thanks for having me.
That myself, I'm going to be able to use. And of course, this is, if for anybody who wants to go back to this, it'll be, obviously, it's recorded on Facebook Live. So you can always go back to that recording on the SCSA Facebook page and go back through it again. If you want to share it with somebody you think that could find value in some of those tools that Canadian Mental Health is providing to us, make sure you're sending them a link to that video. So again, we appreciate you taking some time and doing this presentation for us and joining us today on this special day, and keep doing what you're doing and spreading the message and helping others out.
Thank you again for having me, and I look forward to hearing the rest of the call.
Perfect. Okay, we'll go with share my screen here. Bear with me. What I gotta do here real quick is find out. It looks like our next guest is on the line, so that's really good. So what I'm gonna do real quick is go back to my introduction. So I'm going to introduce our last guest this afternoon, and I actually haven't had a chance to meet him formally before, so this is my first time meeting Mayor Charlie Clark. So I'm looking forward to hearing what he has to share with us. I'll give you a little bit of his bio like I've done for the other guests today. Mayor Charlie Clark was elected mayor in Saskatoon back in 2016 with a mandate to make Saskatoon the city that gets it right on both the planning for growth, creating economic opportunities, and improving safety and quality of life for all our residents. So Charlie is passionate about Saskatoon. He believes our history of innovation, problem solving, and collaboration can position us as a leading city across Canada. His approach is centered on the belief that partnerships among groups with different perspectives can offer the best solutions to the challenges being faced by cities across the world. He is committed to building a community where people see each other's strengths instead of differences, where families can thrive and children are able to see a future for themselves here. He is married to Sarah Bueller. She's a law professor at the University of Saskatchewan, and they have 3 children together, Simon, Ben, and Rachel. So previous to serving as mayor, Charlie was also the Ward 6 city councillor for 10 years. So he's been around the city for a while, knows the in and outs, and decided to obviously move from one level up to the next. So that's great to see. Before being elected, he worked in the areas of mediation and community economic development. He has a bachelor's degree in conflict resolution and education, as well as a master's degree in environmental studies. So it's really interesting. I like the environmental study side of things. And the conflict resolution, when I listen to you, Mayor, when you go on and speak on John Gormley's show, I kind of think there's some of that conflict resolution comes into play when you're having some of those back and forth conversations. So I commend you for that. So I'd like to thank you for coming out to share a few words with our guests today for Safety Week and Mental Health Week. Mayor Charlie Clark.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Bob, and to you and Collin and everybody who's been involved in helping to pull this event together. It's important that even though we can't get together in the same way we would have during Naosh Week and Mental Health Week to talk about and learn about both the ongoing importance of workplace safety and also mental health. The fact that you're still innovating and finding ways to do that online and to bring everybody together is great. And I think we're all getting more used to these Zoom calls and these systems. And and adapting, and that's part of what we have to do. I don't know if Minister Morgan is still on the call, but I know he spoke earlier, and I can't help but take a quick moment to thank the minister. Haha, you are.
Absolutely. Good to
Hi,
see
Don.
you, Your Worship, and hope you're having a safe time during the pandemic.
Yes, you too, and I do want to take a quick moment because it's actually even related to the call to thank the minister and the government for the announcement yesterday around the infrastructure funding. This is something that is going to mean a lot in terms of our city's ability to keep running and to create jobs and opportunity in our city, which we know is really important. And obviously in the realm of the Construction Association and many of the partners on the call today, one of our goals has been to look at all the different ways we can keep people employed, keep the economy going, and keep supporting people. And so the announcement by the provincial government from the municipal standpoint will be really instrumental in helping us play our part as the engines of the economy that cities are in helping to do that. So again, thank you to Don Morgan for that, and to your government. I don't want to take a lot of time. I guess, and I know this is sort of towards the end of the call. So I simply do want to say that, this pandemic and the issues that a lot of everybody is facing in terms of both mental health and physical health, when you have an invisible virus in the community that we know can be devastating in its impact on people, but you can't see it, you can't smell it, has caused everybody to have to change their behaviors. And in particular, the reality and plight of those on the front lines who are now, whether it's our police officers, our firefighters, our healthcare workers, our transit drivers, the people who are working at grocery stores, anybody who, while much of the majority of the population is able to stay home and be safe and limit their contact with other people, those who are out there either treating people with the virus or potentially dealing with emergency situations or providing transportation. We've seen the stories in other places of healthcare workers who've died, who put their lives on the line, and they paid the ultimate price for that. It's such a reminder of workplace safety and of the importance of having the right systems in place and mechanisms for staff and employees in every different sector of our economy and our community to be safe. And we recently had the National Day of Mourning for people who passed over the last year. Normally we would be gathering for that event, but it's a very sobering event every year to hear about people who have passed either because of complications from their work or in the last year because of workplace accidents. And I know Minister Morgan has been very engaged on this, and as well as Collin and everybody at the Construction Association and the Safety Association, and all those people out there on the Occupation Health and Safety Committees in different workplaces. This pandemic and even what's happening for us when we're trying to make sure that we can have people out there working to fix water lines safely and to deal with park maintenance safely and to pick up garbage safely and our own city crews. We're having to learn and adapt and build on all of those networks of skills that have been built up through the great network of resources and organizations in our province that are providing that support. So I really want to thank you for that. And I think for all citizens, when we go through a time like this, when that safety issue becomes so visible, it does remind us of that. And then, for Reanna and for the partnership with the Canadian Mental Health Association, I have this note by my desk here around mental health because, I think all of us who are in leadership positions and all of us in society right now, we're having to adapt so much. I've been stretched a bit just in the last few days in particular, trying to jump back and forth between trying to help my kids learn online and their frustrations and confusions that they're having, trying to keep up with assignments and working from home sometimes and jumping back and forth, and then keeping up with the demands of the city and just you know, wanting to be able to get out and do things in a normal way, which we just simply can't do. It's a test for all of us, and I think it reminds us all that we have to look after ourselves, and we have to be patient, and we have to be patient with each other, with our spouses, with our family members, with our friends, with our coworkers, because everybody's being tested by the situation. And so these are the 5 key messages for mental health that I learned from a doctor out in Ontario that did a presentation to all the mayors across the country in Toronto a couple of years ago, and he said, in all of the studies around mental health, the key things that are 5 practices that anybody can do that can make a difference are to stay connected to people, and to make sure you don't get isolated and alone, which is very important right now when people are self-isolating. Stay connected and be part of a community. Keep active, as Reanna said, and get exercise. Take notice, which is, as I understand it, to take a moment to just stop what you're doing, breathe, and look at what's around you, and get into the moment, and not let yourself always be running off in many different directions. That's where things like meditation and other practices that are proven come in. But just take notice, keep learning. So stay engaged and stay curious and keep learning. It actually helps your mental health. And finally, give back. That in fact, what's amazing is that by providing support to your community, by donating your time, by helping your neighbor, by getting involved in a volunteer capacity, it actually doesn't just help whoever you're volunteering for, it helps you and it helps your mental health. So I keep that by my desk because, believe it or not, mayors can have mental health challenges sometimes too. And because we all can, and we have to be honest about that, just to help me get through some of those challenging moments and to work together. And so that's we would have had this month the first ever mayor's luncheon, working with the Saskatoon branch of the Canadian Mental Health Association to celebrate workplaces and in community leaders and organizations who have contributed to mental health in our community. We weren't able to actually get together to do that this year, but it was a great initiative that the CMHA here put together, and we're going to be celebrating, and there's a news release that's out that's celebrating those organizations that have contributed, and I want to thank them today for all the winners, for all of your work and efforts to contribute to mental health and in our community. It's been a top conversation in the last few years, and especially, you know, in more and more forums and gatherings and settings that I'm in, people are talking about concerns about mental health, whether it's children or adults or coworkers or family members or ourselves. We really need to pay attention to that, break down the stigma around talking about mental health, and make sure we can support each other. So again, thank you for everybody who's helped to organize today, and for giving me a chance to thank you for all the work. And let's keep working together to make sure our workplaces are safe, and that we look after our minds and our spirits and the mental health of ourselves and our families and coworkers. And with that, I'll pass it back to you, Bob, and I wish everybody a great afternoon.
Thank you very much, Your Worship, for joining us today and for those words. We really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule. And yeah, we'll get through this together. So thanks again for joining us today. Okay. All right. So we're getting really close to the end here. I'm going to share my screen again. Oh. All right. So as we're getting close to the end here, we only got a few minutes left. What I wanted to do is we had did some sharing on the Facebook page. We had asked for some people to share and like the page so that they could win some of the gift cards. What we did as the Saskatoon Regional Safety Committee is we went out and purchased a number of gift cards, if you will, from local restaurants in the city here of Saskatoon in order to support local, to help them out through this time, but also to make this a little bit more engaging and fun for you, our participants on the call today. So what I was doing in the meantime, I had gone through the list of people through the Zoom call, and some of the names through the Facebook page that were on there, and ended up running a generator real quick to just generate some numbers based on the names, and to award some people some gift cards. So if I call out your name, and I need you to then send us an email or contact myself at, you can just send me an email at bawatson@pcl.com. Let me know your information so that we can send this out to you. So with Pink Cadillac, we had Darren Gunther. You have won yourself two $25 gift cards to Pink Cadillacs. So thanks for joining our call today, Darren. Make sure you reach out and let us know your contact information. Then we had Kim Hunter. You have received two $25 gift cards for Prairie Sun. And then we've got Jason Clapper. I believe I pronounced that right. We've got two $25 gift cards for Ladas. I think it's pronounced Ladas. So I'm just going to write that down here so I don't forget that. Then for Una, we've got Mike Moore. So Mike, if you're still on the call, please reach out to us. We'd like to get you your gift cards to Una. Then we've got one for Primal Pasta. So that goes to Cam Schnitzler. Cam, you got those ones. And sorry that I'm losing eye contact because I'm multitasking here. Now, there was the last two cards that I've got, or the last two prizes. One is for Calories. It's a $25 gift card. That's going to go to the names that I had drawn through our Facebook page to like and share. So Jim Clake, you've won that one. So we'll send him a message on Facebook and let him know. And then Will Jameson, you won the two $25 gift cards to Smileys. So we do, typically through our RSC, we hold our quarterly meetings at Smiley's Buffet and Event Center. So it's been, you know, a little difficult for us not to be there supporting those folks. But yeah, we're able to help them out this way. So we're looking forward to that. So that's our prize awards. We've got a couple minutes left. So I just want to say thank you to all of our guest speakers today that came on. I'd like to thank you again for Honorable Don Morgan for attending and sharing your thoughts from the government. Again, thank you to Collin for your words from the SCSA. And Gord Dobrowolsky, thank you, Gord, for sharing your message from Workers' Compensation and WorkSafe Saskatchewan. And a special thank you to Reanna for your presentation today. I think that's going to help us all a lot with some of the things that we can use to get through this time together. And we will get through it. We're like you said, we're a resilient bunch. And we hear that quite often in the public and in the media about us Saskatchewan folk. So that's really good. And of course, thank you to Mayor Charlie Clark for joining us as well. So that's about it. If there's any questions or comments, I don't think that anything has come through on our Q&A panel. So that's going to wrap things up. Just want to make sure that if anybody has any questions, comments, or we're looking for more information on the regional safety committees. They are scattered throughout the province and all the major centers. We have Estevan, Swift Current, Yorkton, Prince Albert, Regina, Saskatoon, and Lethbridge. I'm not sure on that one. I might be off on that one. But you can get all that information through the SCSA online website. And then go to your local RSC. If you're a member who is part of the B-rate code under workers' compensation, we'll make sure that we get you hooked up with one of these RSCs so that you can join the RSC and get some more information. So that's about it. Thanks again, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed the call, and go out there, be safe, and let's look out for each other, both physically and mentally. Okay, take care.